abilities, so if you've been ganked by a particularly nasty creature with a nasty special ability, chances are Mike is responsible. I've also got Matt Morris, another 12-year veteran of Blizzard Entertainment. Matt has worked on StarCraft, on Brood War, he's worked on Diablo, Warcraft 3, Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne, and on World of Warcraft. All right, so I'm going to get this started here. I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who's going to explain some of the sort of history of Blizzard Entertainment's real-time strategy games and how these missions have come to be.
Right, so in the original StarCraft, we had this awesome story we wanted to tell. It had interesting characters, it had plot twists, but to really tell the story properly, we felt like we had to improve our storytelling techniques. So, for example, one of the things we introduced was the briefing room, where instead of having a narrator reading a story to you, you could have the actual characters popping up and talking to you, talking to each other, and interacting. It really breathed a lot of life into the story scenes. We also very much wanted to more closely tie the story to the gameplay of the missions themselves. We wanted to make you feel like you weren't just out there killing everything you came across. You were doing things, different things, for a reason. You know, you had some purpose for doing the stuff that you're doing. So this led to varying mission goals. We had holdouts, we had timed missions. Sometimes you had limited forces, and sometimes you were even allied with other races to work together and ended up playing multiple races at the same time. An example of this is a mission that a lot of people will remember from the Terran campaign. It's called Desperate Alliance. And basically, you're stuck on this planet. The Zerg are invading, and help is on the way, but you have to survive for 30 minutes while they arrive. So here, you have a reason to do what you're doing. You're not just trying to go out and slaughter an enemy. You're doing it for a purpose. You're trying to hold out while this help arrives. And you're actually, the gameplay of the mission itself is not about building up a massive force and crushing something. It's about building base defenses and placing your troops in positions to intercept the enemy on their way in. It was a very different style of game for us. We also noticed that we started to need unique interface elements that we never needed for the standard multiplayer game. Things like a little timer window up in the top of the screen to tell you how much time you had left on a mission. And it seems like a really small thing by today's standards, but really, at the time, this was one of our first steps to properly supporting a very different gameplay style for the campaigns. So, on to Warcraft 3. Now we're talking about a game that was focused and centered on heroes. And not the type of heroes from StarCraft, you know, up in their battle cruisers and command centers controlling the battle from afar, but heroes that were right there on the battlefield, you know, fighting alongside their units and the rest of the army. So it made sense to take those characters out of the briefing room and put them right there on the battlefield where they can play out the actual combat that's going on, and you could see the conflict, and you could see them talking to each other. And this wasn't just in a separate space. This was literally on the same battlefield that you ended up playing the missions on. So it really brought the story mode scenes to life. And we also very much wanted to take it another step towards making each mission unique and different. So we really wanted to change the vary the gameplay of the missions themselves to make each mission feel like their own mini-game. An example of this is, here's a shot from a mission called The Culling from the original Warcraft campaign. And the gameplay of this mission is actually racing against another force. One force is trying to go out and collect a bunch of undead, and you're trying to put an end to that by killing the undead before they can get to it. And sometimes this race involved interfering with the other side to slow them down so that you could reach your goal before they did. It's a very different gameplay style than we've tried before. Another example is the secret mission from the expansion. After the original Warcraft, there was a lot of mods going out into the community, and one of the types of mods was called the tower defense. And there were just tons of them. They had all this great gameplay in them. We said, why don't we try and make a mission around that? let's throw away all the rules. You're not training, you're not even building structures or training facilities and peons and collecting resources. The whole gameplay is centered around massive armies heading towards your base, and you have to fend them off by strategically placing defensive structures, defensive towers, to whittle down the forces before they got to you. And it's a very different gameplay style than you'd expect to see in any kind of RTS, really.
So that brings us up to StarCraft 2. Now in StarCraft 2, we're taking a lot of the same ideas that were developed in StarCraft, in Brood War, Warcraft 3, and the expansion set, and trying to push these ideas forward into sort of a new space and create the same kind of gameplay we've always had, but really expand on it and make it just as deep and awesome as we possibly can. One of the things we have in StarCraft 2 that really helps us out is we just have an opportunity for a lot more story. Between our story mode spaces and all of the additional cutscenes that we can create using our engine to create a lot of in-game cutscenes, we can just see a lot more of the story than we ever could in any of our previous games. We're also trying to get you closer and deeper into these characters. In the original StarCraft, of course, you just had the briefing screens, which just gave you sort of the heads of these characters. And in Warcraft 3, as Mike was saying, we're now closer down to the battlefield. We can see these characters moving around on the battlefield. We can see them, running away, coming to help each other. We can sometimes see them fighting as well. But they're still sort of a character on a battlefield using a real-time strategy engine. You can't see their facial reactions very well. They don't really have a wide range of emotions they can really give off. Now in StarCraft 2, with our new story mode experience, we can get you a lot closer to these characters. You can see sort of the anguish that Jim Raynor faces when he has to decide, does he want to destroy an infested colony, or does he want to try to save these doomed people? We've also got a lot more choices, and this is sort of one of the core values of Blizzard RTS games that has developed over the many, many years they've been under construction. In the original StarCraft, you had some very basic choices. How you wanted to complete a mission was up to you. And in many cases, each mission had multiple ways to beat the mission. But there wasn't a lot of choice in how you got to that mission. You had to play one mission followed by the next mission. In Warcraft 3, there were a lot of side quests that you could choose which quest you wanted to complete. In addition, you could choose, which equipment you wanted for your character, which sort of upgrades you wanted your hero to take into the next battle. Well, in StarCraft 2, you can choose which mission you want to go on. You can choose the types of technologies you want to get. You can choose which subplots you want to follow. You can choose which research you want to complete. So just a lot more choices for the player, further enhancing the same kinds of basic sort of core gameplay values that this studio has had since the original StarCraft. And we're also continuing the same kind of gameplay philosophy and design from StarCraft, and has really developed to a razor edge in Warcraft 3 by trying to make sure that each mission is its very own unique minigame with its own special challenges that really force you to think creatively and stretch your abilities as a commander to deal with each new threat. So now I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he's going to talk a little bit about some of the missions we're developing for StarCraft 2 and give you some insight into the tools that we use to make these missions a reality.
All right, hello everyone. The mission you see before you is a mission we call Mind Your Own Business. The way this starts off is there's a person named Tosh that calls Raynor. This is the first time the players are actually going to see this character, and he's calling up Raynor, and he's basically saying, hey, I have a contract, but I'm having a really hard time. It's down on this planet called Redstone, and the reason why it's a really hard thing for him to do is it's a volcanic planet. There's lots of lava, the ground is constantly shaking, the environment's actually changing, and this just wouldn't be a StarCraft universe if there wasn't Zerg. And so there's Zerg on the planet just making it really hard for Tosh, and so he needs Raynor's help. And so this kind of leads into what Mike was saying as far as each game, each mission is a little unique and different. This is not a build up a huge army and kind of stomp. This is, in order for the player to win, he needs to save up a certain amount of resources. So the player is going to come down here, and he's got to get down onto these low ground areas where all the minerals are. He's going to have to move his base around. He's going to have to buy some SCVs, but he's got to ultimately harvest 5,000 minerals. Now, some of the choices that we kind of put into the mission, which Dustin was talking about, is how much SCVs should he buy? Should he build defensive structures? Does he need to build troops? Does he, these are the kind of decisions we want you to make, because the Zerg are there, and it's a real reality that you need to defend or you're going to be in trouble. And we're always trying to raise the bar. So one of the things that we tried to add to this mission that's a little bit different is we actually have lava that kind of comes up on the low ground. So periodically, you're going to start seeing the lava rise, and now the player is going to be left with a choice of like, oh my gosh, when do I get to high ground? Should I leave now, or should I wait for the last minute and try to get some more minerals? And so ultimately, we want you to play chicken with the environment. And now I'm going to take you into the editor side and kind of show you what we did to create this hostile environment. And what you see before us is there's the two different cliff types here. You got your man-made, which is like the reinforced concrete. You have the natural cliffs. You can kind of see on the right there, it's real red. Basically, what I want to show you with this is not something the artists have given us these art assets and they're just plunking down. Once you get a hold of the editor, you could go ahead and open this up and you can start spraying around and you can start making your own environments and you can start, just creating your own little alien world that your friends could play on BattleNet. The other thing I want to talk about, what we did with this particular mission that we didn't have in our previous game, which is our water editing tool. And the exciting thing about this is the water is no longer locked to the cliff level, and so each person can kind of go in there and create his own water field. And on top of that, he could create multiple. And this is what we did for this mission, so that we could actually have the lava coming up and down. We think this is going to be a great tool for the mod community to kind of play with, and we're really excited to see what you guys could do with it. The other thing that is new to the StarCraft 2 editor is our lighting editor. And this is kind of what really sets off this alien world, the look, the vibe, and everything that you kind of see. And just like the water editor tool, you could kind of create custom light. This isn't something that's baked into the tile set that's determined by the artist. This is something that's up to you. You could go ahead and create crazy color worlds you want, and you could call it in-game, and you could just transition between the two. And so here you go. Here's a little video of the mission. You can kind of see the lava kind of rising and getting closer and closer there. There we go, some dead Marines. And you can kind of see what we did with the lighting right there, how to get the really dark red there. It just kind of makes everything look real hot, just really sells the mission. So now I'm going to talk about another one of our missions. This is the evacuation of Agria. Hopefully you guys all recognize it. It is a mission that's actually in the StarCraft 2 demo area right now. If you haven't had a chance to take a look, I really recommend you guys go play it. It's a fun mission. So once again, go check it out. It's awesome. The way this mission starts off is there's a character named Dr. Hansen, and she's calling Raynor for help because the Zerg have invaded, and the colonists need to get off the planet. And so, this is something we thought as a design team. We thought it'd be really cool to let the player feel what it's like to be on a planet with the Zerg invading, because that's a very terrifying moment. And so this is one of the missions that we kind of get to execute on that. The way the player is actually going to win this mission is that he's going to go down to the planet. The colonists need to get to the evacuation ships, but they've been cut off by the Zerg. And so, this is kind of back down to the choices that we talk about putting in our missions. Is since they're cut off, the colonists are basically going to drive the action in this mission. The colonists are scared. They're getting out of their huts. They're jumping in the truck, and they're like, we're going. We're getting to these evacuation ships. And whether you follow or not, they're going to go. And so now you're left with, how do I escort these guys and make them, get them a safe home? So you could, one of the things you could do is you could build up a little squad. You could get some ground forces, and you could follow these trucks, and you could kind of defend against the Zerg. Or, we kind of do things to help give choices for the player also, which is, we give them some certain amount of information beforehand so they can make some decisions. And one of the things that we do on this mission is we show the path of where the truck's going to go, so the player could kind of look ahead and say, hey, there's a little choke point right there, or hey, it looks like the Zerg are coming here, so you could go over there and you could build some defensive structures, and you could kind of corral the Zerg. So there's really no wrong way to play this. It's just how you want to do it and how you want to achieve the victory. And so now I'm going to show you a little bit on the editor side of how we did this world. And one of the reasons we want to show this particular world is it's very different from the last one I just showed you. The last one's very hostile. It's got the lava. It's just really scary looking. Whereas this one's very lush. It's a farm community. It's a really beautiful planet. Lots of green, lots of vegetation. And so the thing that is new for us in StarCraft 2, which we didn't have before, is in our previous games